Okay, this is math goal, dividing what to do with the remainder, lesson 5-4. So in this lesson, we're going to decide what to do with the remainder because sometimes we get remainders and we're not sure what to do with them when we have a word problem. Okay, so let's get started. So what to do with the remainder? Sometimes we need to add one more if it involves people or items or animals, and I'll show you an example of what that means. Sometimes we need to make it into a decimal. So we turn it into decimal if it involves money and metric units of measurement. A fraction, sometimes we need to make the remainder a fraction if it's dealing with food or time. Sometimes we just ignore the decimal if we can't make another item. For example, if we're making crafts, you can't make another one, we just ignore it, right? We just ignore the remainder. Sometimes they're asking us for the remainder. So sometimes the answer will be the remainder. So their question is asking us for what's left over. And I'll give you examples of all of these. All right, so let's take a look. So the first one says, decide what to do with the remainder. It says solve and decide what to do with the remainder. We're not actually going to solve it here on the video. We will solve them together as a class, but I do want you to see what we do with the remainder, okay? So a roll of ribbon is 1,780 inches long. It takes 1 yard of ribbon to make, or 1 yard of ribbon, which is 36 inches, to wrap a gift. How many gifts can be wrapped? So we're not actually going to solve it. We're going to solve it in class, but I want you to think about it. What the point of this lesson is to decide what to do with the remainders. That's what we're going to talk about. Okay. So how would you, we know it's division because we're working with division, right? So what would we do with the remainder if we have anything left over? So what you would do is you ignore the remainder for this one, right? Why would you ignore it? Because if you divide 1,780 by 36, you're going to get 49 gifts, and you're going to get 49 gifts with the remainder of 16. So you're going to get 49, remainder 16. So if I have 16 inches left over, can I do anything with that 16 inches? No, right? Because it takes 36 inches to wrap up one. So I don't have enough wrapping paper to make another one. So that 16 inches is just, we're just going to ignore it, and I can only wrap 49 gifts. Okay. So we just drop it, and the answer is 49 gifts. And we will actually solve it in class, but don't worry about it right now because that's not the point of this lesson. All right, next problem. Solve and decide what to do with the remainder. There are 247 people traveling to a basketball tournament by bus. Each bus holds 52 people. How many buses will be needed? So, are we going to have to add one more to the answer? Are we going to form a decimal? Is it going to be a fraction? Are we going to ignore it? Or is it remainder only? So let's go back and look at the question. There are 247 people traveling to a basketball tournament by bus. Each bus holds 52 people. How many buses will be needed? So there is going to be a remainder. What are we going to do with it? So pause the video, see if you can figure out, write it down on your math notebook, what you think we're going to do. Are we going to add one more, make a decimal, make a fraction, ignore it, or we're going to write down the remainder as our answer? Pause the video, write it down, then come back to me. Okay, so hopefully you said round up, because when you divide the number of people into groups, you're going to get 52 groups. We're going to get 52 groups, and each one holds 52. So let me start over. If we have 247 people traveling, each bus holds 52. So if we divide 247 by 52, we're going to get 4 groups with 39 people left over. So think about it. You have 4 groups, so you need at least 4 buses, but you still have 39 buses left over. So you can't leave those 39 people behind. So you got to round up the 4 to a 5. You got to get another bus. So you got to make it 5 buses because Can't leave those people behind. So you add another bus. So that's here again, we're talking with people. That's why we added another one. The other one was the craft. We can't make another craft, so that's why we ignored it. But in this case, we can't ignore the remainder. We got to add one more because we're talking about people. You can't leave someone behind. All right, let's look at the next one. Okay, the next one says that 28 students in Mrs. Holguin's class will share 98 slices of pizza equally. How many slices will each student get? So pause the video, read it to yourself again, and decide what you're going to do with the remainder. So remember, here are our choices. Are you going to add one more to the remainder? Are you going to make a decimal? Are you going to make a fraction? Are you going to ignore it? Or are they asking for the remainder? So what do you think? Pause the video. Let me put it up again. Here it is. Take a look at it. What do you think is going to happen with the remainder? Okay, pause the video and write it down, then come back to me. Okay, so hopefully you said you're going to form a fraction because it's food. Remember, if it's food, we form a fraction with the remainder because when you divide it out, oh, and this one says Miss Colby's class, but it's still the same question. So sorry, I forgot to change that. Anyways, so when you divide 98 by 28, you're going to get 3 with 14 slices left over. Okay, so 14 slices left over. What do you do with those 14 slices? Right? There's 28 people. You can't just give people extra ones because we want to share them equally. So what are you going to do? You're going to have 14 left over, so it's going to be 14 over 28, which if you simplify turns out to be a half. So each person is going to get 3 1/2 slices of pizza. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at this one. A bagel shop has 138 bagels to be packed into boxes of 12 to be sold. The extra bagels are for the workers. So how many bagels do the workers get? So I forgot to add that here. So let me pause that. Okay, much better. So I added it. How many bagels do the workers get? So bagel shop has 138 bagels to be packed into boxes of 12 to be sold. The extra bagels are for the workers. How many bagels do the workers get? So what are you going to do with the remainder? Are we going to add one more? Are we going to make it into a decimal? Is it a fraction? Are we going to ignore it? Or are they asking us for the remainder? So pause the video and see if you can figure out what we're going to do with the remainder. Okay, then come back to me. Okay, so hopefully you said that we're going to use the remainder. That's going to be our answer, right? So a bagel shop has 138 bagels to be packed into boxes of 12, so it's 138 divided by 12. So if we do that, then we're going to get a remainder of 6 if we do the math. So it's 138. Let me write it down here for you. 138 divided by 12. We're going to get 6 left over. So we're gonna be making groups. So if I did the math problem, you would see that my remainder would be 6. And so the extra bagels are for the workers. What are the extra bagels? The extra bagels are 6 that I have left over. So the workers will get 6 bagels. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at this one. What are we going to do with the remainder? A rectangular garden has an area of 882 square meters. The long side of the garden has a length of 35 meters. How long is the short side? So how long is the short side? So Are we going to add one more? Are we going to make it into a decimal? Is it going to be fraction? Are we going to ignore it, or is it going to be remainder only? So think about what we're going to do with it. Pause the video, read it, figure out what we're going to do with the remainder, and then come back to me. Okay, if you said form a decimal, you are correct because we're talking about meters. And remember that we said that when we have meters, when we have the metric units, which is meters, metric units is meters, we make a decimal. And these are a little bit trickier to do, so we will work on this and I'll show you how to do that in class. But this is a decimal. We're going to make it into a decimal. So we're going to form a decimal. And then when we divide 882 by 35, you're going to see that we're going to get 25. And then we have, we're not going to be able to evenly divide it out. We'll do it in class because it is pretty lengthy and I do need to, show you step by step how to do it. So we will do for sure this in class, okay? So it is going to be a decimal and we'll go over it in class because we haven't even learned how to divide by decimals, but it's pretty easy, but we'll do it in class. Okay, so what I learned, so we learned how to distinguish what to do with the remainder. And don't worry about this. I do have a handout. I will hand it out to you. Don't worry about writing. You're not gonna proof of learning by solving a problem. You're not gonna do one right now. We're gonna do it in class together. So reflection and a question, don't worry about that either. So just what you learned how to interpret remainders, okay? And that's it.